Hey folks, the Atheist Prepper here. So the thing I wanted to talk about today is something I've never actually heard discussed by any other prepper. I've never seen discussed on a prepper website or a video or anything. But I think it's important, and I'm sure others out there have thought about it. Particularly women in the audience have thought about this. And I wanted to see what your thoughts and your plans are. I wanted to talk about the threat of rape in a world without rule of law scenario. Now, just a little bit of extra information. There's kind of an incorrect perception of the threat of rape in today's society. Reality is there are a handful of demographic groups that have a substantial risk of being raped. One is actually men in prison. But as far as women being raped, if you are not an African American teenager living in an inner city, or a young woman in college, particularly one who attends frat parties, etc., which, being in one of those categories, greatly increases your risk of being raped, particularly by a stranger. Your odds of being raped are actually very small. Excuse me. If you are, a middle-aged woman with a steady long-term relationship with a man who doesn't rape you, it is extremely unlikely that you will be raped. If you are married, even if you're single and dating, if you're extremely cautious about whom you date, you're still very unlikely to be raped. If you're going and picking up guys from bars, the odds increase. But I doubt very seriously there are very many women who are cautious-minded enough to be preppers that are doing that. So I'm just going to I'm going to make an assumption that any women watching this video are probably not doing that, and are probably not likely to be raped. And the men who are watching this video, the women in your life, are also unlikely to be raped, because they're probably not doing those things either. They're probably not living in those circumstances, and they're probably unlikely to be raped. But if you take away modern society, which it is modern society, and it is the law, and the possibility of being, prosecuted and convicted as a rapist, that prevent men who want to rape from being more prolific at it. Even, if you take away the rule of law, most men are still not going to be rapists, but the ones who are going to be more prolific. And there are going to be some who today don't rape women because they're afraid of being prosecuted for doing so. But if you take away the rule of law, they would start. So the risk of rape would go up substantially, astronomically, without the rule of law. And as I've talked about in my previous videos, and as is, a frequent, I think, topic of thought, at least, in the prepper community, in a poo hits the fan situation, anything people know you have is a danger to you. Any resource you have that other people know you have is a danger to you. If people know you have food or water or electricity or tools or fuel, for building a fire, for cooking, for driving a car, whatever you have that other people know you have is a danger to you. If you're a woman, you are essentially a resource that some men will want to take from you. Your body is something men will see and want to take from you. Which is really a horrific situation. Just to think about that. But it's true. And, like, for me, I mean, I would be able to, as a man, I would be able to move fairly freely, as long as I didn't look like I had things people wanted. And as long as I was careful about, areas I went through, as long as I'm not trying to move through, violent riots or whatever. If I'm careful where I'm going, I could probably move around fairly safely by myself. I would just have to make sure I didn't look like I had anything someone wanted. My wife, on the other hand, would not be in the same situation. Just being outside, just being where people could see her, would be a danger. Even if she looked like she did not have food or water or tools or fuel or anything materially anyone wanted, just being a woman would put her at risk. And so, for me, one thing I think about, because, as I've said before, in an extremely bad situation, bugging out would really be our only way to go. Getting out of the state of Florida, getting out of high population areas, would really be our only hope of survival, which means we can't wall ourselves into our little apartment and survive here. Which means she would be out. And essentially depending on me to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's, I'm just one guy. So I'm wondering, especially if you're a woman, any women who come across this video, have you thought about that? Have you thought about how you would go about minimalizing the threat of rape to yourself in your preparations? Have you acquired men's clothing for yourself? And, do you intend to try to pass as a man? Or do you intend to make sure you're always in the company of men you trust? What are your plans? If you're a man with women in your life, what's your thought on protecting them and on them protecting themselves? Now, I just want to mention, I know that people are going to watch this video and they're going to leave a comment. Just make sure your wife has a gun. Get her a gun and make sure she can use it and make sure she carries it and she has a concealed carry permit and whatnot. While guns are valuable for self-defense, they're valuable as a last resort in self-defense. It's, as I've said before, the only way to make sure you don't die or get seriously injured in a violent confrontation is to not have a violent confrontation. The more times you are in a situation that you have to use a gun to save yourself, the greater the likelihood you will fail to save yourself. So I'm not satisfied with just give my wife a gun and make sure she can use it, and then if the crap were to hit the fan, she would just be fine because she would have this gun. Well, lots of other people would have guns. And not all situations, a gun doesn't always work to protect you. There can be too many people. You can be taken by surprise. A gun can be taken from you. It can be used against you. There are too many variables in the situation to be satisfied with just get a gun. I I don't want my wife to ever have to use a gun to defend herself. I don't want to ever have to do that. I would much rather, I would rather society continue functioning, but if it doesn't, I would much rather be able to successfully get by in a world without rule of law without using a gun or any other form of violence, or minimalizing the amount of that goes on, than depending on my ability to successfully use violence in, frequent violent confrontations. So anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on it. And thank you for watching the video. I hope you will like, and if you haven't, subscribe and share. And if you know anyone else who you think might have a good thought on this, please send it their way, and I'd be happy for the input. Thanks.